Welcome to today's Explainer. Right now, we're diving into something absolutely crucial: how to systematically rebuild your internal boundaries. I want you to picture this. Someone makes a subtle, cutting joke at your expense, or maybe they just casually talk right over you before you can even finish your thought, or they make demands that completely ignore the limits of your time and your energy. Look, we've literally all been there. But today we're going to dismantle that scenario entirely using the cold, unyielding architecture of ancient Stoicism. So ask yourself this: are you bleeding premium psychological energy? Think about your own biological reflex to that kind of subtle disrespect. You know the feeling, right? That sudden, sickening drop in your stomach. But instead of holding your ground, what do you usually do? You let out this weak, accommodating laugh. You shrink your posture and you just swallow your unvarnished truth to avoid the discomfort of a confrontation. You might look polite and easygoing to everyone else, but internally, you are actively participating in the silent, systematic destruction of your own dignity. Okay, let's really get into this, because modern society has kind of sold us a catastrophic delusion. We've been trained from day one to believe that being accommodating is the exact same thing as being a good person. We think that if we just endure subtle disrespect with enough patience, people will eventually wake up and recognize our value. But the Stoic reality? It is dark and it is uncompromising. The world simply does not respect what is infinitely pliable. True respect is never pleaded for, and it is absolutely never earned by softening your boundaries just to make someone else comfortable. It is commanded. Our core metaphor for this explainer is the inner citadel, and this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. Think of it as a titanium mental operating system. When you install these Stoic laws into your mind, you stop living as a convenient target and you transform into a dangerously composed force of nature. But before we start reconstructing your inner citadel, you have to make a definitive choice right here and right now. Are you going to keep letting the crowd purchase your dignity at a discount, or are you finally ready to dictate your absolute worth? All right, let's jump into Rule 1, the immediate execution of the accommodating smile. I really want you to examine your immediate reaction to a passive-aggressive jab. Your nervous system literally panics to diffuse the tension, right? And you instantly force this nervous little smile. Well, here's the brutal truth. To a manipulator, that smile is an engraved invitation. It tells their subconscious that your boundaries are just an illusion. To command space, you have to drain your face of all expression. When a disrespectful comment lands, you respond with cold, detached neutrality. When you stop handing over the polite reaction they depend on to feel safe, the entire power dynamic instantly collapses. And that brings us right to Rule 2, the unblinking pause. We live in a culture that is absolutely terrified of dead air. The second a conflict arises, ordinary people rush in to fill the void. They snap back with a quick defense, or they stumble over their words trying to regain control. And all that does is prove to the aggressor that they hold the remote control to your nervous system. But highly respected individuals, they operate on a completely different temporal frequency. They use weaponized silence to starve their own anxiety of oxygen, which creates an unbearable, suffocating psychological pressure on the aggressor. So here's the exact biological override to execute that pause in real time. Step 1, clamp your jaws shut. Step 2, lock your eyes directly onto theirs. Step 3, wait 4 deliberate seconds. Handing them a total unblinking void instead of a chaotic reaction becomes this massive mirror, magnifying the foolishness of their words. And you know what? In almost every single scenario, the aggressor is going to break that silence first, nervously backpedaling, because the person who controls the pace of the silence is the undisputed commander of the room. Which leads us to a massive realization, perfectly captured by the Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius. To be angered by another is to become their slave. Emotion is literally the ultimate currency of human interaction. Have you ever wondered why certain people are able to disrespect you repeatedly? It's because you continue to pay them. When you explode in anger or you break down, you're validating a toxic person's existence by proving they have the power to alter your internal state. You're just paying them. So, how do we stop paying them? We do it by adopting the posture of the clinical observer. You calmly, coldly decide to give them absolutely zero emotional calories. You do not raise your pitch, and you absolutely do not match their chaotic energy. You start looking at their toxicity as just a reflection of their own broken internal architecture, which is completely separate from your objective reality. When a manipulator realizes the words are just striking a titanium shield of calm indifference, their whole strategy shatters. You win simply by refusing to fund the game. All right, let's move to Rule 4, amputating the defensive thesis. Whenever your character is questioned or someone challenges a decision you've made, the immediate, overwhelming instinct is to put yourself on this invisible witness stand. You launch into a breathless 5-minute monologue, just pouring out premium energy to build a logical case so they'll finally understand you. But the Stoics knew that offering an uninvited explanation just signals to the room that your internal compass is defective and requires their stamp of approval. To stop bleeding that power, you have to strip away every apology, every qualifier, and every single excuse. You state your reality in one flat, unbreakable sentence. That does not work for me. This conversation is over. Boom. A sovereign mind doesn't build windows into its walls, and it certainly doesn't hand over the gavel for someone else to judge its worth. Once you stop acting like a suspect on trial, the world instinctively stops treating you like one. And that flows perfectly into Rule 5, the radical embrace of the villain label. Look, so many of us are paralyzed by this desperate need to be seen as the good person. You might be terrified that if you actually enforce a strict standard, someone is going to call you difficult or label you selfish. But commanding ultimate respect requires you to look at the prospect of being mischaracterized and falsely accused and just coldly smile at it. You have to radically embrace the fact that, yeah, you might just be the villain in their fragile little narrative. Think about it. If you're twisting yourself into agonizing shapes just to ensure nobody ever paints a negative portrait of you, well, the crowd owns your leash. Instead, you need to accept a mathematical certainty. Living a life of strict boundaries and uncompromising truth will absolutely offend people who benefit from your lack of self-respect. Let them spin their defensive webs. Surrendering that childish need for universal approval unlocks a terrifying, amazing level of invincibility. Now, let's shift our focus to your physical vessel with Rule 6, the physical embodiment of sovereign space. Respect isn't just some philosophical concept floating in the ether. It is a primal, biological response. If you subtly step out of the way to let others pass, or if you fold your arms tightly across your chest, or kind of angle your body toward the door, your nervous system is literally broadcasting submission. The primal brains of everyone around you instantly register that you belong at the bottom of the hierarchy. To change that dynamic instantly, you have to claim physical sovereignty. Square your shoulders. Plant your feet firmly on the earth. When you sit down, do not shrink, expand. Take up space. Move through the world with the slow, relaxed, deliberate pacing of a predator that has no natural enemies. When you force your physical body to occupy its rightful space without apology, your mind instantly follows, and the entire room will instinctively step back to make room for your authority. Okay, we have arrived at the final and, honestly, the most liberating law of all. Rule 7, the unwavering execution of the permanent exit. The fundamental reason people continue to disrespect you is because you've proven to them that you will never actually leave. You've removed all consequences from their toxic behavior. To become a person of terrifying value, you must completely destroy your fear of abandonment. You have to realize that your premium energy is never, ever trapped in any room, any relationship, or any office. I want you to let this ultimate vow sink deep into your operating system. My presence is earned, and my exit is absolute. The most invaluable people on earth possess this unblinking willingness to pack up their energy and walk away forever. If an environment refuses to recognize your worth, you don't launch a campaign to convince them, you don't beg, and you definitely don't issue theatrical ultimatums. You simply gather your undeniable competence and quietly, permanently exit the building. So, I'm going to leave you with this lingering challenge. Tomorrow, will you soften your stance, or will you strike the anvil? Make no mistake, the masses are going to continue to test your new titanium boundaries just to see if the old, accommodating version of you comes back. Will you surrender to the weak programming of your history, or will you cold-bloodedly choose sovereignty and self-mastery? The inner citadel is yours to command. Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.